For this game we have Trat from Team A, 2D Back from Team B, Black Magic from Team C, and NC Game Wizard from Team D. We are on series with a lot of green prices and an electronics colony.
So with this start, I'm immediately thinking we can't go Nomad anywhere just because of the high electronics price, and the colony combined is just going to be too much. That sort of puts us down to 3 options.
Right. None of the possible Nomad founds are even very good, so can't even make something like that work. I'd probably be looking at Robot here somewhere. Expansive could potentially work. Scavenger is really just in the corners, and that does not feel super.
An expansive HQ has been founded.
That was a very early found as well, considering that our claim to the market. Obviously, Black Magic is valuing this found very highly. And he's gone straight into water.
A scavenger HQ has been founded.
I don't know how I feel about the quick move into water. It makes enough sense. You can get some quick money off that and then transition into steel, but then that also means your steel mills are on top of the good water. And that always makes things awkward when you need to make multiple transitions very quickly. Trat going for these combo tiles should serve him quite nicely.
The black market is online.
A little light on steel to start though.
Yep. Try also picking up that first claim so he can go into the combo tiles plus 2 steel, which is nice.
Mentioned, wasn't really expecting a scavenger except in the southeast corner. 2D Back going northwest corner instead. It's going to be very weak carbon for him. So we'll see how that works out. Maybe core samples will help out. Otherwise he does have strong access to aluminum and water. Not so much silicon though.
I don't actually mind the scavenger as much as maybe initially thought, again with Electronics Colony. As long as he does core samples to get that 3rd carbon up, if it falls a high, that'd be great. And a good position to make a lot of money from electronics there.
I suppose, but I'm not really entirely sold on the advantage of founding in that corner versus the other corner, where you could have better carbon, better equal access to aluminum. Water's slightly worse, I suppose.
I mean, it is series, prices do go crazy, and without a scientist, life support will be high, so having, I think the high medium water is a good thing to have.
Right. I suppose it's especially useful as a scavenger, and he did just already fix his carbon problem with that nice high core sample. NC Game Wizard going for electronics already makes some amount of sense. He isn't really pulling in much to sustain that besides the carbon, and I guess aluminum. No silicon, but only 0.5 silicon seconds. Maybe he gets away with it. That is the only player moving into power so far, power rising rapidly.
Yeah, it's a very nice power play coming in, especially with 3 steel factions, one of which is a robot shipping longish distance.
Right.
I'd just like to see a bit more anticipation of this. Maybe from Night 2 back, you can easily go into the reactors for cheap.
Right. And pretty easily move into them on top of the aluminum or something like that. And that would be useful. Black Magic upgrading should be able to move into some power of his own. NC Game Wizard will probably have a much harder time, since he won't want to get rid of his steel or electronics. High silicon tile will be very useful for NC Game Wizard. Silicon already quite high. Gonna be a tile he wants eventually, but I am concerned that adds to his shipping costs. It piles on a bunch more debt, and he still doesn't really have a path into power, so could get dicey for him. Meanwhile, Black Magic going into some power of his own, 2D Back choosing to go into reactors instead. An interesting choice. I suppose they're cheaper to go into than farms would be. They also do carry that higher power cost, and 2D Back does not seem like he is planning around that for the moment. I'm concerned about. But,
unfortunately, my game has hung again, so I can't really comment too much. That was caught off my mind.
Alright. Well, Tret has been making a lot of power money consistently off his 2 nuclear plants, both gooned, playing it very safe, and it's gonna be quite nice for him. Already caught up to HQ3 with a comparable amount of money to everyone else, moving into a third nuclear plant even. Some food to go along with it should keep his life support costs under control, help him keep making this power money. I'm curious what he's going to do with this next black market cooldown. Probably would like to see a freeze onto Black Magic's food. No, onto power instead also makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, not flies, not power is very nice.
Right. I suppose Trad does know that he has the only 2 goons in the game, which is a very interesting thing. Actually, knowing that he has the only 2 goons, not using the circuit overload on the power instead feels a bit weird to me.
Yeah, that's probably just an oversight. It's worth noting that Trad has obviously he's going all in on this power strategy right now, whereas the other players are focusing on claims.
The black market.
Right,
So-
it's working out really beautifully for him. Something you can sometimes anticipate when there are the claims on the market, people focusing entirely on those instead of getting aggressive or defensive. And definitely being helped out by 2D back being so late into power. Finally moving to some now. Anti-Game Wizard moved into some solar panels, which are alright, but not even enough to cover his costs. Just barely enough.
Taking that 4th power now, Tudor back does have it spied, but with that lovely position of the goons, there's not much you can do about that.
Thanks. Yep, very well planned by Tret. This is an interesting tile. Pleasure Dome will be solid with 2 expansives and a scavenger. On the other hand, I might be tempted not to bother with this as Trat. He should be making still so much power money that he might be able to just snowball the rest of the way through.
Definitely, with this short-term strategy he's got of going into the power, I think definitely maximise that money is what he wants to do. I mean, by losing 24k to this, he's going to pay it off fine, but he's potentially missing out on a majority buy on someone now.
Supposed to be fair, majority buys tend to be a bit weaker on series relative to upgrading and things like that. The subs don't necessarily seem to manage lower level HQs all that well, and well, there's a lot of money made with extra claims. Right, 2D back with these 2 mutinies does what he can to weaken Trat's power, and it is useful for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely gonna. It's gonna kill the price between it. Unfortunately, he's not going to get himself out of any kind of debt with all the power he's got himself.
It is odd to me that Black Magic chooses to drop that overload there. I guess maybe not knowing that the goons are where they are. It is just a guess play, knowing that that's not going to be defended.
I'm more surprised he's targeting once it's actually being mutinied as well, because I guess the aim is to deny Trat from getting power money. Since it's been mutinied, that's not really an issue.
Right. The only explanation would be just being afraid of bouncing. Right. Trat really committing hard into the late game with these 2 optimization centers. They're going to serve him really well. Especially this 3 adjacency one. And even with all these late game investments, he's still very solidly in the lead.
Yeah, on top of that, on top of the auction, he's won by the Pleasure Dome tile. He's also bought 2 claims now.
Has been upgraded.
So he's actually got the most amount of claims since anyone else. Meanwhile, Black Magic, the other person buying claims, is actually lagging behind on HQ3. Just upgraded now.
HQ has been upgraded.
But his long-term strategy is not paying off as well.
One thing that Black Magic does have going for him, he is the only person to move into uranium. There are definitely other uranium tiles for other players to take, especially NC Game Wizard, but for now he's going to make a lot of money off these 2 tiles.
The black market is online.
In fact, I'd probably like to see NC Game Wizard just switch his 2 panels into uranium right now.
That'd be absolutely great. Be making a solid, maybe 3 in a second each.
The optimization center is available for option. Planned obsolescence begin.
Meanwhile, Trat has gotten 3 optimizations done. I guess his second optimization center just finished. He is the, well, I guess NC Game Wizard also starting to move into one? Or where is it? Yeah, just starting to move into it. 24k claim auction should be helpful.
That's a very unfortunate power surge just gone down on track with like a nice little line up to his slow condensers. Actually, it's whiffed a little bit and just gone around its seal.
And hacking uranium, so this is natural. Might be coming too late for Black Magic to get the main advantage off of it, since Trad has also secured a lot of uranium.
Our methods continue to improve.
So at this point, it feels like Trad is almost running away from the game a bit with his triple optimization center, one pattern lab. There really is no pressure coming down on him whatsoever.
Right. There needs to be more black mark coming down on him. Other people need to be matching him a bit better on optimizations. None of that has been happening. NC Game Wizard still has a nice late game advantage as a robot on series, being able to sidestep all those life support costs as always, and maybe having an easier time with awkward prices if he uses robot adjacency well. Doing a good job of putting some pressure onto Trad's stock, making him invest money he might not want to invest in there.
Yep, it was a very good move. Trad did make a bit of a tell as the upgrade hit Q5. Once he was safe, he sold out of all of his stock, which meant he was investing his money elsewhere. So maybe we could have seen this move a bit sooner to sort of counter that play a bit.
One other thing that's been going on this game, Trad has not secured any carbon, so with chems and electronics starting to shape up into some really important markets, that could be a very big issue for him. NC Game Wizard has actually been consistently muling carbon this game. It has 4 active mules on it. An interesting choice.
Optimization routine successful.
I can't help but feel that this is really feeding into Trad, who still has that triple nuclear plant, power still 150, and with the mules, NC Game was actually losing about 6.5 power per second.
Yeah.
At least during the night time with solar panels down.
And no other player has made strong moves into power, just mostly covering their costs, or not even. So it really has been feeding Trad. Goody Bag starting to make this move into Perpetual Motion Energy Vault. Always a really nice combination to see on series, just taking care of that power problem. But he might be in some trouble with NC Game Wizard starting to push into him. This fight getting started is definitely concerning, since anything that's not pressuring Trad is concerning.
Yeah, definitely. I think the way this is going, with Black Magic behind and hits Q4, and Trad being so far ahead, this could be sort of the beginning of the end of the game.
Right.
If these two fight too much.
Definitely. If Black Magic is going to get it back into things, this auctioned hacker array will be a good start. We'll see what he does with it. Aluminum shortage to start is interesting.
The black market is open for
Probably
business.
also not going to work out very well. Everyone has some stockpile of aluminum, and everyone has some access into it, so...
The engineers have advanced our production.
Yeah, I think I would have maybe liked something more like maybe silicon. NC Game Wizard's the only one with like a tiny bit of that coming in. And he has a nice 1.5 himself.
Trad also has this 2.75 surplus.
Oh, I completely missed that.
And I guess there aren't great other options to attack. Everyone's starting to move into electronics now. Maybe you go oxygen?
Price manipulations to begin short.
Maybe even carbon.
You also have the option just to surplus as well.
True.
Surplusing power would just shut Trad,
The black
a lot of
market
Trad's free
is
income down,
online.
which is kind of happening already.
Trad's money now is just largely in chemicals. He's being allowed to get away with having this large carbon deficit,
Optimization routine successful.
which is in part just driven by 2D having to liquidate a lot of his carbon just to survive as best as he can. Yeah, just very concerned about how this is playing out because, okay, 2D starting to buy back into NC Game Wizard does prevent the very obvious play of Trad starting to push into NC Game Wizard himself, but regardless, Trad is in a very, very strong position with so much money already and all the late game advantages he could want. And there we go.
Your stock is being sold.
NC Game Wizard starting to sell out of 2D back. It's just far too late for this. Should not have committed in the first place. I think this was fairly predictable, but can be hard to see in the moment.
Yep, definitely. I think all the optimizations are now.
For drugs? No, these are perfectly legal.
So we have Trat and 18 optimization to the second best player at 5 now. So that sort of optimizations are the cornerstone of series, and like, I think Trat's just done it absolutely perfectly.
Right, he's done an excellent job. Just entire game plan. NC Game Wizard is. His 5 optimizations are even all just piled into power, which just makes things especially awkward.
Yep, I think given his strategy, I think he could have just negated that by just rushing liquid batteries, and it would have a very similar effect with his solar panels.
Right.
So Trap now has thinking machines as well. It's literally just covering all of his bases.
Yeah, I'm not sure Thinking Machines necessarily comes into play this game, but it is still mildly useful.
So something else I'm seeing as well is Black Magic is now surplusing carbon, which, while it makes sense from his perspective, because he hasn't skewed any, it's playing right into Trat once again.
Right, that was basically one of his only weaknesses, and Black Magic is just taking care of that for him. That is getting very close to the buy onto NC Game Wizard. And once that's done, hard to see the path back.
Yep, I'd like to see NT sell out of his stock right now. Sell out of Trat stock.
Yeah.
At least give them a chance.
I guess the one thing you can say about this game is that Trad's investments have all been very heavily into optimizations. Prices are starting to crash out somewhat, even though they're still very strong, but he also has Thinking Machines. He's planning for an... Wait, no, that's Black Magic planning for an off-world. But Trad can very easily try to move into this off-world.
Yeah, I think this is the perfect time for off-worlds now. Like, the prices haven't crashed yet, but given another 60, 90 seconds, they'll all be gone. If you wait until the prices are dead, it's usually too late.
Yep. Black Magic especially, I think, has the breathing room to make that move because it is 2D Vac who has invested so heavily into Trat, but he will be the immediate target. This one thing that has been working nicely for Black Magic all game is this Pleasure Dome. It has developed into 6 adjacency. He has picked up virtual reality, has been attacking Trat's Pleasure Dome a fair bit, and that is a lot of money.
183k so far this game.
That off-world is coming down now.
Our methods continue to improve.
He's got it under a hologram, but I don't know if he's going to field anyone with that, given the spike in steel that came with it.
Right, he only has the one tile in his base under construction, so there isn't much to fool anyone with. Looks like
So one thing I would like to see now is that Trat has actually finally got a power. This is the perfect time to make a power play, while Black Magic is readily in it.
yeah, it'd be very nice to pick up a Circuit Overload, hold on to it, hack power up, and then
Prepare for
get
pending
stuff done
market
with that.
adjustments. Optimization routine successful.
Even just if you stop auto-selling power for a little bit would net him a huge profit as well.
Stock is being sold.
Definitely. Trat at this negative 6.2 power a second. Something you can deal with for a short while, but not much longer than that, unless people let you. Goodie bag's starting to sell out of Trat a little bit. Not sure that does all that much necessarily. It's because Trat has been very patient, just sitting on all his money, rather than committing into 2D back and making himself vulnerable to the sellout. He's just leaving his options open. Whichever player develops into more of a threat, he can take out it.
Yeah. So Black Magic is now doing the complete opposite of what we said and actually surplusing power. As 2D back actually helps him out as well by overloading Trat.
Right. I do not understand the power surplus at all, considering he is at this pretty solid surplus of power. If the shortage happens first, maybe he's trying to bait a switch into power and then pull the rug out from under, but Trat has nanotech, so that's not a big deal. In either
At
case,
this point, Trat can buy whoever he wants.
Right.
Just shift buy.
pretty much has this wrapped up.
I guess he's probably waiting for Black Magic here. Black Magic does now look like the bigger threat.
Oh,
Nice.
okay.
So one thing I noticed, Black Magic has the sort of more threatening HQ, but 2 back did have the larger cash on hand, so that's another reason to go for that.
Optimization routine successful.
Does make sense. I do think that the extra... Yeah, okay. You're probably right.
This is all assuming he doesn't know about the off-world either. Let's have a look.
Oh,
Yeah,
is
so
this
it's not spied out, maybe he missed it.
Black Magic should really turn off this fuel auto launch. This food is just that much better. I still don't see a way back into this for him, unfortunately. Even with stock sellouts and everything else, he's still a very solid amount short. Chemical surplus is a nice counter to this chemical shortage. So he has been playing that well enough at least. Even though he does not actually have that spied out.
Yeah, that's quite intuitive of him. I think he did also just try a food hack though, which Trat did sell into. So that sort of worked against him.
Yeah, at this point, Black Magic is behind by enough that he really needs to be trying to do some sort of shortage. Make as much money as quickly as he can. Surplus is, even if they help him, they aren't going to close the gap.
Yeah, he needs to exponentially gain money at this point. That's the only way to do it. The only other option is obviously a power charge would work as well, because it would put Trat quickly into debt, which can lower the stock price and help it a lot as well.
The black market is open for business.
But I don't think there's much else to say this game. It's all pretty much said and done.
Indeed.
Prepare for pending market adjustments.
I assume Trat is going to do yet another shift buy just to end this.
Yeah, no particular reason to do anything else. Buying in now just inflates Black Magic's price a little bit more, gets him a little bit more on when the stock sells. No real advantage to buying in.
Look at all the money. Market land is available for option. Congratulations.
So just passing the auction there since the game is very over. guess this is the last attempt at a steel hack, which isn't going to do much.
Yeah. Steel hack's also just very dangerous against opponents with nanotech. And it's the game. And just very well done by Trad, very solid game plan. Jumped out to a huge lead based off of power. Back in particular, maybe not challenging that market quickly enough. NC Game Wizard, I'm not entirely well, yeah, he had the slower start. He couldn't really afford to challenge power early. Eventually he moved into the solar panels. I'm not sure why he was so committed to the solar panels. Black Magic, I think, doing what he could on power, but not being able to get the goon down really hurt him. And from there, Trat just really playing out the long game, 3 optimization centers, and that wrapped things up very nicely.
Yeah, he has 30 optimizations now into the game. So it's pretty much everything except carbon, which he didn't have. Meanwhile, everyone else had a grand total of 20 optimizations between them. So, yeah, I think that was a very straightforward game for Trat in a sense. Just macro hard, get resources, well, get ahead, buy people out.
Right. There were definitely opportunities for other players to get back into things, maybe if they work together on some play on Carbon, but that's always hard to do with multiple players. If NC Game Wizard hadn't gone into 2D back, maybe they also have a chance, but it was always going to be difficult to catch back up. It does make me a bit sad to see that Trat didn't really need to make any plays for Carbon. Didn't need to surplus it, didn't need to mule it. Just allowed to get away with it.
Sometimes it just happens. If you misjudge the situation, I think because Trat did go so heavily into optimizations and late game, there wasn't like a big red flashing number for the opponents to see and be like, oh, this is our target. So instead, obviously, I think NC Game Wizard was probably looked the most threatening at a glance to the other players. Which again is just great by Trat to sort of go completely and challenge like that.
It would have been interesting to see what happens if NC Game Wizard just stays in Trat's stock instead of selling out after the failed majority buy attempt. I think he was making a decent amount of money at that point. He maybe could have committed to more optimizations, but selling out and moving into 2D back did not help.
Yeah, since I'm about to play this next game,
Alright.
I'm going to jump out. Thank you for letting me cast.
Thank you for joining me, and good luck with your game.